special way to bring humanitarian values to doctors that are trained in figures and facts and technology to save lives. And that's, even if you can just do that, that's a major thing, you know. And then on top of that, to say, now you have to be a human being too, you know, is saying, well, that's not necessarily what they're going to teach you right away. Because, you, quite honestly, you know, you can't save lives just being a humanitarian. And I know that because 2 or 3 times I was near death in my life, and just being a humanitarian wouldn't have saved me. So I thank God that there's technology and that people know how to do all that stuff. But after all is said, the humanitarian stuff is extremely important, but I can't condemn them for not teaching it first. You know what I mean? You gotta first give the guy breath. You gotta know how to put the mask on, you know, and save him. And if there's a car accident, how to go in there and fix your, hey, Lois, how to fix the holes in the holes in my intestine from the car accident, and then be a human being. No, you know, but now the medical profession, after, I guess, I'm thinking, it took a while for many of these people to say, maybe there's something more. Maybe we have to think about art. Maybe we have to think about human values and how you treat people and how you treat patients and psychology and you know, things that Ed as a teacher, when you were a teacher, I mean, those are the first things probably, you know. But for doctors and lawyers, but particularly doctors, I guess, because of all the technical stuff and the science, just the science, which I always failed. I never failed. I had to take it 3 times. I mean, I couldn't get through biology at all because of the chemistry that they put into it my first year in college. I never took chemistry, so you know, so I had to take care of my science requirement by taking geology, you know, rocks, baby rocks. You know, so that was a great experience to know that these doctors were really interested now, most of them, in this area. And it reminds me why we study Shakespeare, that, you know, of all the writers, it's, for me, all the humanitarian values are in it, more than maybe anybody that's ever written, maybe. But some people feel that's true, and I would say I'm one of them. But like maybe medicine, you have all this humanitarian value and spirit in the plays of Shakespeare. But they wouldn't be great plays if that was all there was to them. Just like with medic, you can't have great doctors if they're just great humanitarians. There has to be a sense of craft, as it were, technology, craft not equally. Do you know what I mean? And in a sense, structure. And of course, then the language, which you have to give more than lip service to in order to appreciate and to do it. So it's, again, combining all that humanitarian, which, God, I mean, what writer gives you more of that than Shakespeare, with a real sense of the language, the structure, the music of it all, and then what kind of structure when you're talking structure? If you're talking structure, then a lot of writers who wrote after Shakespeare would say, what structure? I mean, he's writing movies.
Yeah.
He's really writing movies. I mean, it's not really a well-made play in terms of Ibsen, or even Chekhov. I mean, it's really more rambling. It's really more panoramic. But then a good movie has structure too. A really good movie can't just go on forever. It has to have a first act, a second act, and a third act. And really well-structured movies may seem like they're, but there's really structure to them. And before they go in front of the camera, a lot of people put a lot of attention on that structure, the well-made screenplay. So there's structure in obviously he had a sense of, in all these plays, for the most part, how they began and how they ended. So when we look at these plays, again, it's a different kind of structure than what we did with Tennessee Williams and with Chekhov. And it's a different kind of structure. It's equally challenging. So for those who are coming to it new or virgin to this, frankly, those are my favorite people to go for because I have to be honest. I always feel I'm brand new to it every time I do it. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel good. I'm saying it because I feel that way. And I feel that there's a reason that I came to Shakespeare relatively very late. Very late. I didn't do any real Shakespeare until well after I had all my Yale Drama School training. I was 37 years old when I did my first Shakespeare. And I had been doing theater since I was a teenager. And there was a reason I came to it late. I saw it. I went to it. I saw it in high school, although we frankly never did it in high school, and I came from one of the strongest high school programs, theater programs. I had a wonderful teacher, director, who's still the best director I ever worked with, because he was the first one at Scarsdale High School. And we had an incredible program there with people that went on in the field, and or if they didn't go into the field, they used theater in major ways. But we never did Shakespeare, as far as I can remember. And then at Yale, I may have done a scene at drama school, but I don't think we ever did much of it. At least I did. No, I didn't. And I acted in some classical stuff. I acted in "'Tis Pity She's a Whore" by John Ford for the Yale Rep. And in college, I did The Fool of King Lear in my second or third year. And that was in college, so that was my only real experience doing it. And then when I got out of, while I was at Yale, I did Ben Jonson's Volpone at Yale Rep. And then again for the New York Shakespeare Festival, playing the dwarf in Volpone. I was playing the dwarf, Nano. So I was down on my knees, waddling around all over the five boroughs with Roscoe Lee Brown and
the mobile.
Paul Hecht. Huh?
That was the mobile theater?
That was the mobile theater.
With the four trucks, my favorite theater.
It was a great theater.
Yes.
And a theater where we brought the classics to people that frankly didn't want them.
Yeah.
Why should they? We were going into their playgrounds where they were playing ball and telling them, no ball tonight. What? I said, no ball tonight. We have a play for you. Fuck you. I don't want to play. Now, they said it in Spanish, so we didn't even know what they were saying, you know. But, yeah, so my experience is, at first, as an actor, was going in and having rocks thrown at me. Literally, for doing the classics. And there I am on my knees, waddling around as this dwarf. This is still the most comfortable position for me, that I can sit like this for hours, because I played this character, and I did it for a long time. Although it literally killed me when I first did it. I had to get a Whirlpool bath because I was in such pain. I had a crinoline. But they threw rocks at us, so my introduction to classics was being, you know, people were throwing rocks in Bedford-Stuyvesant. They wouldn't even tell us we were in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Because when we were in Bedford-Stuyvesant in 1967, it wasn't the Bedford-Stuyvesant it is now. This is Yuppieville now. But in 67, it was just dark out there. Dark in terms of the light and dark in terms of the audience. And so we did a lot of running away, ducking. And then Roscoe Lee Brown, God bless him, he's gone, would really scare us because I was lucky. I was low, so I was a low target. But the big guys were not, and they were getting, you know, and there were eggs coming also. So Roscoe, who was a college athlete, track star, and he was playing Moscow, great ball. He went out front. He said, "I'll take care of this." And we went, "Oh no," because Roscoe's very effeminate. And we said, "Oh, this is going to be a crucifixion." And he went out there and he said, "My people, my people, you are my people." And we went, "Oh God, no!" He said, "Oh my God, I am ashamed of my people." And we all were cowering in the back, going, "What is he doing?" And there was not a pin drop. Yeah. Not a pin drop. "You will act like ladies and gentlemen, you are my people." And he left the stage. And there was not a pin drop, and the performance went on. It's incredible. And we just went on. And we did this classic with this, you think about Shakespeare language. The language in Johnson is even more, you know.
Obscure.
So, and they listened the rest of the way. There's always a smattering of what does he mean, you know, people talking, but what they were doing was translating from, you know, into Spanish, because it was in English when we were doing it. Otherwise, it was perfect. So that's how I grew up to Shakespeare, and I was 35, 1967. No, I was 25, I'm sorry. I was 25 years old. So it wasn't until 1979 that I did The Taming of the Shrew, my first production, and that was for the Folger in Washington, and, which is now the Shakespeare Theater in Washington. And I was petrified. I was petrified because I had never done it. And I didn't feel that comfortable with the language because I had to look up everything. Mm-hmm. Like I still do. You have to look up all the words. Mm-hmm. And I was taught by high school teachers who frankly were very good teachers, except they taught it academically, and I was not a great student academically. So, you know, I had to recite The Quality of Mercy is not strained in front of a whole class, as we all did, as part of an English assignment in my senior year, or was it junior year in high school. And we were graded on that academically, not for the performance, We were graded, how were we graded? For every word you missed when you recited it by heart, it was 5 points off.
Oh, gosh. That's absurd.
Yes, it was. And I was not only scared, but pissed off about it. Because even then I knew there was something wrong about that. Without knowing, I said, this doesn't make sense. And otherwise, she was a very good teacher. But I guess that was her way of getting discipline. So that made me hate Shakespeare. That made me hate it. Not like it, not dislike it. Hate it. And fear it. Gave me incredible fear. And also not wanting to learn it ever again. You know what I mean? I didn't want to go to it. And I was 17. But that first production in 1979 at the Folger, I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And the reason I fell in love with it was, first I had a friend of mine, John Beery, God bless him, he's gone, who was an Englishman friend of mine, and he loved Shakespeare and knew it incredibly well. And what he did was he took me through it privately before rehearsals, scene by scene, line by line, and deciphered it with me. And he also, aside from that, but it wasn't an academic take. He wasn't taking me through academically like I had been taken through it. He more or less said, he said, look, this is this induction scene in The Taming of the Shrew. I said, what do you do with that? I said, half the productions don't even use this scene, because it seems outside the play itself. It's the play is the play within the play. So, and most people often just do the play; they don't do the induction scene. I fell in love with it the way he taught me, and it made me feel really comfortable, because he said, these are real people. He said, these are real people. And then my mind went back. When he said that, my mind went back to my first experience looking at Shakespeare professionally. And that was 1965 in London. I had gone, my first real Shakespeare, I guess I'd seen it in college, other than doing it in college, was watching the Royal Shakespeare Company do Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, both parts. That was the first real, and I was just, oh my God. And what really hit me, and I saw King Lear with Eric Porter, and that was also incredible. What hit me about those plays was how incredibly real those characters and actors were. They weren't real in terms of method acting. They weren't real in terms of any kind of theory. They weren't real in terms of technical acting. They weren't real in terms of Meisner. They weren't real in terms of Strasberg. They weren't real in terms of Simon. They weren't real. They just were real. Didn't matter what they were doing. They seemed like people. That's all. I didn't care what they would do. I didn't care how they trained. They didn't seem like they were acting. They were kings and queens, and they were human beings. And I remember thinking, wow, I love that. That's what I want to do. And they weren't naturalistic, but they were real. They weren't naturalistic because I heard every single word. You know what I mean? I got a sense of the poetry of it. And yet they were so real. Little did I know how hard that is. But I became convinced watching that production of the Henrys, and then my friend taking me through Taming of the Shrew, that that's how I wanted to do it. That I would find my own way of doing it. that nobody would ever tell me that this is the only way of doing it. That I would borrow from everybody, that nobody had the answer. Nobody. I don't care how, I didn't want people coming and saying, what is the way to do Shakespeare? I would always answer to them, I'll tell you my approach, and that's just my approach, and it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where did you study? And I would always say, I studied a lot of different things. I didn't have one way of doing it. And I would say, my technique was just what I gave you now. This was how I learned it. This is how I learned it, by being first turned off by it, scared by it, not doing it because of that, and then being totally immersed in the experience of seeing real people, seemingly real, doing it, rather than doing it correctly. And, by the way, there are lots of people that do it correctly who turn me off. Turn me off. Because they do it just correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody like Richard Burton knows the rules when he did it, but he didn't follow them. Because he had such an incredible gift that once he learned them, he was able to then just say, now I do it the way I can do it. So I learned that you have to know the rules a little bit, whatever, in terms of getting the music of the line. But generally, I also felt that if you have a feeling for the music, you don't have to learn shit, which is a very unhealthy thing for most people. Because they want to know there got to be the rules to learn. And I learned the rules academically, and then I let them go. Not because they're wrong, but because most of the time they didn't help me. Only when I got in trouble did I go back and look at the meter. And that's, and frankly, I think most rules are that way. You learn them, and then you can't act, you can't just follow rules. You have to, otherwise it's not, you know what I mean? It doesn't become spontaneous and instinctive. You're thinking about the rules as you do it. And, but schools are about rules. Schools are about rules. That's why parents pay to have kids go to school, so they can learn the rules. So for me, college and education equates to learning rules, and that's not bad, but it's only good if you then, as an actor and director, can kind of say, okay, I got enough. Now, I can now go on my own. So, we'll get a little of both in terms of what we'll do with it. We won't neglect anything, but we won't say this is the only way either, ever, at least from my point of view. I don't care. And I also find that it might be the only way for Ed, but it might not work for Pete. Rather than this is going to work for everybody. As soon as I feel somebody doing this is going to work for everybody, I myself step back a little from that, because I found that, again, it might be right, but if it doesn't work for everybody, then what good is it? Even if it's right, it could be right. Nobody's saying it's not right, but it might not work for certain people. So what we do with this is experimental. It's got to be experimental. It's got to be each person approaching it by watching the work of other people, which is what we all do. By watching how everyone else works on it, you're going to get insight by hearing different things from different people. Rather than saying, I want to know the answer. What's the answer? Well, no. I mean, people pay for that.